Hello, welcome to Citizens Forum. I'm doing the first interview today. It's Wednesday, March the 1st. I'd like to start by thanking the volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes this program happen every couple of weeks. Our first guest is Bruce Halser, and we're going to be talking about what I think is one of the most important issues in the country today, which is proportional representation, electoral voting reform. So, Bruce, I'll just ask, what is proportional representation?
Well, proportional representation covers a whole bunch of different voting systems, but it's basically the idea that the way that people's votes are made or cast in an election should be reflected in the legislature in proportion to how they voted. So in an election where 38% of people vote Conservative and 22% of people vote Liberal, that those parties should be reflected in the legislature or parliament with that rough amount. Now, different systems will have some wiggle room around that, but that's the general idea. The system we have now is not proportional because, of course, we don't vote as one big province or one big country. We vote in a lot of individual ridings, and what happens in the legislature or parliament is a party that wins by 1% in most of the ridings gets 100% of that riding's representation. So we usually end up with big lopsided majorities that don't reflect the popular vote, and it doesn't really reflect how people voted collectively.
So if we had used proportional voting in the last election, of course things would have changed just because we were using PR. But let's say the results were approximately the same. The Liberals would have about 40% of the seats. The Conservatives maybe 30.
Yeah, in that range.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
And it depends on the system, but certainly we would have had a minority government instead of a majority government.
But we wouldn't have a minority government, we'd have a coalition government.
Because no party got a majority of seats. And any minority government, by definition, either is a coalition government or a hung parliament.
Okay. So we would have a completely different government if we had PR than we have today. And personally, given what Mr. Trudeau is doing, I would really like to have something different. And so we might have, I think probably the most likely would be a Liberal, NDP, Green coalition.
I think it'd be more likely to be a Liberal Conservative coalition, but
exactly, that's very possible too. Yeah.
In countries that use PR, there's often a lot of bargaining between parties after elections.
Right.
And also another byproduct of some PR systems is that big tent coalition parties like the Liberals and Conservatives tend to fall apart, and you get multiple smaller parties, either regionally based or divided on different issues.
But in Germany, for example, they have, I think they still have one or two big parties, and is that?
Well, they do, and it depends on the system you use, for sure.
So, is in terms of the country, in terms of our lives, in terms of the economy, the environment, and everything else, is proportional representation important?
Well, it's interesting because we had a federal election a year and a half ago in which 3 of the 4 parties in Parliament promised to change our voting system. And although the Liberal Party wasn't specific about proportional representation, many candidates emphasized proportional representation who ran for the Liberal Party. So, judging by the parties in the last election and the electorate, there's certainly a lot of interest in looking at our voting system and how it should change. We've had a number of instances in Canada where parties have won elections with less votes than their opposition, and usually that doesn't strike people as very fair. So I think it's worth looking at.
Let's look at, can we look at a specific issue? I'll just take one where I think there's widespread agreement, and that's on the labeling of GMO foods. I don't know where you stand on that personally, but I think, I keep reading, although who knows, that 75 to 80% of Canadians in this want genetically engineered foods labeled. If we had a PR voting system, do you think we'd be more likely to be a more democratic country and something like that would actually happen?
It's really hard to say. There's a difference between your voting system and your legislative system. But I do believe that more proportional voting systems will lead to legislatures where there's a lot more independence of individual MPs or MLAs, and that would lead for the ability to be flexible on these things and for people to vote across party lines and for ideas from opposition parties to come forward and be considered. It depends on your system. In a strict list PR system where party leaders selected the party representatives, I'm not so sure. In a more dispersed system like MMP or STV, and I know those are acronyms, but in other sorts of systems, legislators become much more independent, and except on critical fiscal issues or platform issues of their party, there'd be a lot of room for legislators to work across party lines, finding solutions together on things, and I think then you could see that. It's kind of like how city councils work, you know. We have city councils where even in those cities where there's political parties, city councils don't work on partisan structures, and often people of different ideologies will find common solutions or vote together on things. These same people run for the legislature, and then they get locked into this adversarial system where the opposition always votes no and the government always votes yes, and there's debate, but there's no debate aimed at changing anybody's mind. It's just a show.
Maybe we can talk about that particular issue for 1 second. It's a different issue than the voting, but it's the control.
Well, what interests me in changing our voting system is that I think if you change how people get elected, you will change their behavior once they're elected. One of the cancers that our current system creates is that it makes MPs and MLAs so dependent on their party leaders that they have effectively no independence and they can't do the job they're supposed to do, and our institution becomes staid. I'd love to see a parliament that was more open and free.
So would I. I think so would everybody in the country. Is the reason that Parliament is not more open and free in part because the party leader has the right to sign everybody's nomination papers?
It absolutely does. In our current system, you know, every time you watch an election on television or pick up a newspaper, you'll see a lot of political experts handicap the ridings. And they'll say, these ridings are safe Liberal ridings, these ridings are safe NDP ridings, these are safe Conservative ridings, and then there's a bunch that are up for grabs. But the majority of ridings don't change hands in our elections. The majority of ridings, absent some major sweep, are pretty safe. And so if you're elected in one of those ridings, all you need to do to get reelected is secure your party's nomination.
Yes.
And in order to secure, you're only going to secure your party's nomination if you've played ball with your party. And your caucus whip says you do a good job and your leader likes you. And if you're a maverick, you may not get your party's nomination. You won't have that protection. The party's nomination is all that matters substantively in most ridings in the country. And that's why most MLAs are afraid and most MPs are afraid to stand up and be independent, because the only way they're going to keep their job is to curry favor with the party leadership.
And it's like the antithesis of democracy. We elect them, but once they're elected, and a lot of people go in with the best of intentions, but once you get in, there's the carrot and the stick. If you want, you've got a great career, and I mean, the sky's the limit for some people. Yeah. But if you don't play the game, they won't sign, they'll kick you out of the party tomorrow.
I've worked in politics, and people go into it for very good reasons, and they all want to get something done. And they quickly learn that if they want to get these things done that are important to them, well, they're going to have to swallow up the whole party message and play ball. And they're explicitly told that. Sometimes they're told you have to vote against your conscience. But if you do, there's a better chance that something good will happen for an issue that you care about, or for your riding, or whatever.
Or for you.
I've seen it happen, or for you.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, that particular rule, is that, I think I've heard that is actually part of Canadian law.
Well, the Election Act requires party leaders to sign off on nominations,
Okay.
but even before that was the law, our voting system just leads to that conclusion anyway. Even if party leaders, even before the era where party leaders had to sign nomination papers, there was extreme pressure from party presidents and people with power in the party to get rid of MPs during the nomination process who hadn't been cooperative, and to change them. You never hear of an MP who's cooperative not getting renominated. But sometimes you will find, all of a sudden they've discovered local democracy in this riding, where there's an MP who maybe, for whatever reason, the party leader didn't like, and there'll be resources and interest in another candidate.
Yeah. And that is so vitally important, because that determines who controls our government. It means that we don't, because the people we elect can't do what we want if the party wants them to do something else. It's the fundamental problem, or a fundamental problem.
It's absolutely true. I'm sure there are thousands of stories out there of constituents who go to their MP and are given a sympathetic hearing, and the MP will privately say, I agree with you, but I can't do anything about it right now.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
So those are two things. I mean, changing our voting system, which I think is vitally important, and really Canadians should be looking at this issue of who controls the people we elect. Do we, or...
Well, that's why I came to support electoral reform. You know, the idea that it should be about fairness for political parties, and this party got 8% of the vote but didn't get 8% of the seats. I don't know if that carries a lot of weight with people, but I think changing our system so that it's more democratic and responsive does. And I think the failure of electoral reform campaigns in Canada to date is that they've really focused on the fairness for small parties, and it needs to be about representation for voters. That's what people will understand.
So Mr. Trudeau has now said changing the voting system is off the table, but it's not really. Is there anything we can do at this stage of the game?
You know, good ideas will never be stopped, and changing the voting system is always on the table. It's a question of how it happens and the right way. I don't know what the timing's going to be. You know, in BC in 1996, we had an election where the party that got 42% lost and the party with 39% won. And the guys who got 42% didn't like that. And when they got into government the next time, they created a citizens' assembly, and we had a referendum, actually 2 referendums. So there was a process there which almost succeeded. Other circumstances like that will arise. First past the post will continue to disappoint people, and I think there'll be a demand for voting reform down the road.
I hope so. Bruce, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
And thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum.
Welcome back to segment 2 of Citizens Forum, and we always have a Walt and Jack show to talk about some of the current events and recent news. So Jack's brought in a few articles and a few observations. So what do you want to start it with, Jack?
And you have a few as well,
Yeah.
so we'll throw them back and forth. I want to start off with the housing crisis. Last summer, just by accident, I walked out of Mayfair Mall, and I was just out walking, and I walked across Douglas and into the sort of Burnside area. And I found, much to my surprise, that there's this very, very large area. It's around Duplin and a number of streets. It's very, I mean, there's blocks and blocks of very, very low density, a lot of kind of empty parking lots, a lot of single-story, older rental housing, some in great condition, some not. A lot of houses that are one-story or two-story houses that are being used as offices.
And they're older houses. too.
Older houses, but just being used as an office for some. And I'm walking around in there, I'm thinking, you could build a beautiful city in this area. And there's not even a talk about it. It's never mentioned, it's not discussed. We have a housing crisis that has put thousands of people on our streets and made everybody else pay a fortune for a place to live. And you walk around that area. So then I noticed it around Mayfair Mall. As I walk north of Mayfair Mall, between Mayfair Mall and Uptown Mall on Oak Street, or even driving north of downtown on Government Street or Douglas
Yeah.
and just looking west, there's this huge area where you could build beautiful, beautiful, nice communities instead of going into the neighborhoods like they're going and really damaging established neighborhoods. What is going on, Walt?
Well, you know, there's so many ingredients to that problem, but I think mostly is this sort of ideology that densification of housing is somehow not harmonious with good quality of life in a city. But if
They're
you're
densifying, but only in a very, very limited
Yeah.
area. They're over densifying, whereas you could build really beautiful, great housing, and
Yeah.
it will bring the price down. And that's, I think, what they don't
it
want.
seems to be that you're jumping from single family dwellings to high rises or something, you know, more commercial. And there's a big thing in the middle there where you can have row housing, townhouses.
4 or 6-story buildings built around a
That's
green
right.
space. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking large areas. I mean, I've just been shocked ever since I realized that. And then I walked around Vancouver, very close to downtown, where they have this huge housing crisis, and there must be 2 or 3 square miles
Yeah.
right close to downtown of exactly the same. It's super low density, very, very old, parking lots, vacant lots.
Yeah.
So I think I think the issue is that corporate Canada just wants a shortage of housing, and they've used
Yeah.
that to make a fortune by charging 3 times what housing should charge.
Yeah.
The government is going along with it, seemingly at all levels, because the provincial and federal government have stepped out completely. So, and the media never talks about it. So it's a disaster that
Yeah.
we don't have to have.
Well, it's a great divide too of income earners, where more and more people are falling into that category of having to rent. In Vancouver, which I think it's the pinnacle of the crisis, where you see professionals not being able to purchase homes in Vancouver. So you know, and meanwhile, all these other development potential is just not being used.
Really, that area very close
Yeah.
to downtown. It's just north of Hastings. I think it's 2 or 3 square miles. I walked
Yeah.
around it. You could build a city in there, and they don't do it. So
Yeah.
it's a symptom of the great ill that has befallen our country. It's
Yeah.
just one of the symptoms.
Yeah. So I had a couple of observations. Of course, I'm trying not to watch TV. I really, I hardly even watch this show, because the thing is that we're getting a daily dose of this Trump stuff in the States. It's got so ridiculous. I mean, I really will not watch it. There's nothing to see there, folks. There's nothing to see. Daily droning of that behavior. It seems to just diminish the whole process. Now, it seems that, you know, it seems to be some type of agenda. My view is, and I think Warner was on a few weeks ago talking about climate change. And it's just, and we're looking at a situation where the Arctic Ocean is going to be opening up, and there'll be no ice in the Arctic Ocean in the summer times at all. And we'll soon have ice-free poles on this planet, which we've never had before in the history of mankind. Now that's something to talk about. I could look at that issue every day and try to figure out how we're going to solve it. But instead, what do we get? We get this Trump news every day. And it looks like to me also, when you're looking back at that election, which seems so strange, the weirdest election I've ever witnessed, and we've seen some strange ones, it seemed to me that Hillary And my wife and so many people would love Hillary Clinton. We don't want to believe this, but she had a lot more in common with Donald Trump than she certainly had with Bernie Sanders. And if you look at what happened to Bernie, who he was just simply shuffled to the side, and it looked by all fair measurement that he won the primaries had the Democratic Party not created new rules to shove him to the side. So
Well, you
we
know,
have-
when you say that, people may think, well, what the hell is he talking about?
Yeah.
But I mean, really, there are a lot of questions about a lot of the votes.
Really, and but you really, there's a whole story going on here that we're not finding out about.
Yes, yes.
And directly to do with the election. And then this, I think you've often said this yourself, when you see a big story coming up, you know, like the O.J. Simpson trial and things like that, you started thinking, well, what is really going on? What story should they be talking about instead of this? And I think there's a lot of that diversion going on now, a lot of distraction for the public. And the public are getting less and less able actually to become critical and get engaged in the issues, because the public relations part of this story is just simply confusing people to the point where they don't know what the truth is anymore.
Yeah, yeah, and yet, I think there's still a direction to go, and it's hopefully towards I just think, if, you know, Bruce and I were talking in the earlier segment about just democratizing our political system. I think if we could do that, it would be a big step forward towards more sanity in an increasingly crazy world.
Yeah.
How, you know, I used to come on the show and I'd say, oh, the media's lying, the media's lying. But when I look at it now, I mean, the media seldom lies, but they just never tell us the truth. So here's a headline that I think kind of outlines that. It says, this is the Vancouver Sun from a couple of days ago, as climate changes, so will forests. Okay, fair enough. They're telling us, and it starts off, forest geneticists are aiming to tune up Canada's working forests with trees better suited to changing, blah, 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 blah. But the real headline should be, as climate changes, we're all going to die.
Or the forest is going to disappear.
And the forest is
Yeah.
going to disappear. And the real truth is that every time we start our cars, we're poisoning our children's future. And the corporations have known this for 50 or 100 years. This is nothing new. They've deliberately gotten this into this mess because it maximizes profit. And the media has never told us, folks, if you don't stop driving your cars and we don't just start smartening up, and
Yeah.
we're all going to die. I mean, that's what it's coming to.
Yeah, and we're not giving us any of those options that we should have for super fuel efficient automobiles, let alone building electric cars and stuff like that. And by the way, relying on geneticists to design forests, we've already gone down that road. These monocultured forests are terrifically vulnerable to climate change. If there's no diversity in the forest, different types of trees, some are drought resistant, some will handle cold weather. So if some trees die, others will continue.
That's right, diversity is...
You know, and this is so important. You know, even the pine beetle thing, you know, that went through the BC, you know, the pine tree just could not withstand the climate change. When that tree goes, and other trees are now trying to grow, you know, there's a buffering, but in the end, there'll come to a point we'll have a kind of a tundra, a grass tundra, and then we're heading for deserts because these trees cannot survive in this type of terrific heat. So the kind of use science to get ourselves out of this mess, well, we let science get us into the mess. Now we just need common sense and let nature be a help to nature, not design new problems.
Boy, if we could only be a help to nature, that would be nice. We're sort of the opposite. You wanted to talk about
Well, I
a
noticed that
Liberal
Bev
candidate.
Desjardins now is going to become the Liberal candidate, the mayor of Esquimalt, and this is soon after, her work on the sewage treatment issue. And she was the chairman, I think, of the waste.
of the CRD
Yeah. Oh, she was the chairman of the
Chairman
CRD.
of
So
chairperson.
I might be cynical for a moment and wonder, is that a reward for her work that the Liberals now have taken her on, and now allow her to be the candidate? Particularly when you think of how that process was gerrymandered. If you remembering those public relations forums that you and I went to, and just the total disrespect they had for us and others that had critical views, which was a sham. The process was a sham, and Lisa Helps, of course, was part and parcel of that. They ran as for mayors and stuff like that with a very progressive, platform of including the public and opening up the processes, much like the Trudeau did, with all his pronunciations. And here we are now with Bev Desjardins now running for the Liberals. And if you look at the Liberal track record and how
It's a
they
disaster.
attacked, the Liberal government did attack municipalities. Now they're giving back a little bit here and there in different areas. So it's kind of a sad thing for me to think that she went to the Liberals and not look for more progressive ways to express her politics,
And I will say for Barb Desjardins in the early years of this, she was really fighting for Esquimalt, and I thought she did a great job. And it is what it is nowadays. I think people get worn down.
Yeah, I hate to be cynical about it, but sure, to me, it's like business as usual, and away they go.
Walt, I think we're out of time.
Well, we are just about. How
I'll
about
just say lights, car lights.
yeah?
Yeah, I mean, can our provincial or federal or municipal government, whoever regulates this stuff, please look at the issue of car lights and bike lights. They're getting more and more just too bright. I mean, this is a very simple thing to do. Set some standards. Don't let every corporation, hey, we've got the brightest new light in the world, we're going to put it on all our cars and bikes. Come on, our governments have got to do, you can't have a society with no rules and laws and regulations. It just doesn't work. Thanks very much for watching this segment.
Welcome back to segment 3 of Citizens Forum. We have with us this afternoon Susan Lowe. Susan's a councillor from Esquimalt, and Susan also sits on the CRD. Is that correct?
No.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Okay, but you have been involved with some decisions around the sewage treatment, or not?
I've been, I'd say, active observer and
Okay, good.
commentator
But
for a
anyway,
while.
I'm going to welcome Susan here today, and we're going to be talking about the ongoing saga of the sewage treatment that's about to happen here in Victoria. So welcome to the show, Susan.
Thank you.
Now, it's a preoccupation of many people in this region, and there's a lot of people involved with all various levels of knowledge and expertise, and dare I say, political agendas, seemingly. And now we're ending up with a sewage treatment plant at McLaughlin Point. It's going to be, will it be or what level of treatment will that plant be? Let's start right there.
That plant will be a secondary treatment.
Okay.
They have an additional unit that they're calling tertiary treatment because it is a third process.
Right.
Third tertiary. However, what that is another set of filters.
And basically, same plant, just a little better filtering.
Yeah, it's extra. It's an extra level of filtering.
Okay. So when we come to issues around treatment of chemicals in the water, say pharmaceuticals and other types of, pollutants like gasoline and oil and all that, will that plant be handling anything like that?
The plant isn't going to treat soluble chemicals.
Yeah.
So things that dissolve completely in
Okay.
water and bind to water
Yeah.
won't be removed. Uh, Substances that will bind to the bacteria and the organic materials will be they'll be settled. The first step is a settling process where the solids fall out, and then they'll be filtered. So some chemicals will be removed from the wastewater, and some won't.
Okay, so we're still going to have a lot of these waterborne
Yes.
pollutants flowing out. In this case, it'll be flowing out into the ocean still. Now, the thing is that the big question is, with this type of plant, do you think we're really going to get something better than we already have? Let's say that we just have some screening of the sludge apparently, and then the rest just all flows out into the ocean. So, do you think that this plant will have a higher level of treatment and will actually be less impactful on the environment?
Yes, it has a higher level of treatment because those substances that will settle out of the water or be filtered and screened
Yeah.
out of the water will be screened out of the water. Right now,
Yeah.
at Clover Point and at Macaulay Point, they use a 6 mm screen. So anything
Yeah.
smaller than that passes through. With the filtering they're using, I don't know the levels of measurement, but I would expect by the end of it, the water that comes out of it will look like water.
Yeah.
It will be fairly clear.
Yeah.
You know, it might not look like sewage.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that we associate with the nasty stuff from sewage will be gone. So a
Yeah.
lot of the biological material will be gone. But it's the endocrine disrupting substances
Yeah.
and the pharmaceuticals that won't be screened out.
Yeah.
We can't be sure that they're going to be screened out because they're not applying any chemical process
Yeah.
to remove that stuff. So
It seems to me like source control would be a very good idea.
yeah.
There's a lot of nasty things on the shelves. If you go into the hardware store, you might have some weeds or something growing on your lawn or whatever, and you can buy some pretty harsh products that can really wreak havoc on the whole ecosystem. And it seems to me that even this new plant is not going to deal with that. Now, I want to ask you a question because I was just I got a few opinions today on sewage treatment.
People have
And-
opinions about sewage
Yeah,
treatment.
but this
No.
this is a case here where, and we're trying to get down to it, and the poor guy was trying to explain this stuff to me, but he was of an opinion, somebody that's actually looked into this quite extensively, that the CRD projections of how much of how big a plant we're going to need and how much sewage we need to treat are wrong. He basically said that the trends are that we're using less and less water all the time in the region. Therefore, we'll have less and less sewage to treat. And he is basing that opinion on the CRD's their own numbers and their own projections. And his assertion was that they're going right against their own data, that they're projecting much more sewage treatment in the future, and the data is showing that we're not going to need it. Now, the thing is this, I mean, what the trouble is with a guy like me and most people, that, we're just trying to deal with this.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary. They're talking 750 million.
But see, the thing is here that we've gone past the point where arguing with the calculations is going to make any difference. That we can continue to have discussions about whether or not the CRD's calculations are right or wrong.
Yeah.
But that horse has left the barn.
Well, what I'm saying is that the CRD's own numbers that they produce for the public to see shows that usage is going down and down, and they've turned around and said, no, the usage is going up and up. They're contradicting their own
Okay, but
data.
contradicting and aiming our frustration at the CRD and saying that their data is wrong or their engineering is wrong, or their projections are wrong doesn't actually address the real issue here, which is that we have a set of federal regulations which doesn't recognize the difference in receiving environments for wastewater treatment plants
Yeah.
and requires us to reduce our suspended solids and
Yeah.
our biochemical oxygen demand to the level that you might see going into a harbor or an enclosed
It's a good
strait.
point. It's a very
and,
good
and
point.
so you can argue all you want with the CRD, and some people are frustrated that the CRD didn't push back against the federal government
Yeah.
more. And I'm also frustrated that
Yeah.
didn't happen. Whether or not they got their data right or wrong, it's a federal regulation treating us like all of the other cities in Canada.
Yeah.
That is the miscarriage of,
Let me put this
of
plain.
engineering and justice
Let
here.
me put this plain to you, Susan.
Yeah.
The numbers that the CRD have about water usage show less and less consumption. Yeah.
Sure, maybe. I just
Well, I have
don't
seen
think
that.
I don't think that
I
there's
have
really a
seen-
point in arguing whether or not we're going to use more or less. We are a sewage producing region.
Yeah.
The question is, how can we best reduce the environmental impacts of
Yeah.
our waste products? The sewage treatment plant that's going to be built on McLaughlin Point now
Yeah.
might be too big, it might be too small. But the thing is, we're still not doing anything about what's going into the storm drains.
Well, these are
And that's
terri-
going right
yeah.
onto the beaches.
Well, see, my view is that I don't trust the CRD's numbers because there's too many contradictions going on. And if, in fact, and then we couldn't check this for the show today, so we can't get into where we're getting our information. But there's an assertion, direct assertion, that says that the CRD has a set of data about water usage that they're not telling the public about. And we're going to be covering that in the next few weeks because we had to check the facts and we have to be careful about that sort of thing. There's a real question of whether or not the people the proponents of this treatment plant and want to build this plant are telling us the truth. And I ask you, please check that. Check that fact.
There's nothing at this point that I can do about whether or not their water projections and their volume projections are right or wrong. I mean, get 3 engineers in a room and you will get 3 different opinions about the interpretation of the data.
Yeah.
So there might be engineers who've done the work for the CRD that say one thing, and there's another set of engineers who say another thing. It's like economists, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone's got an opinion, and
Yeah.
that's not the fundamental point here.
Yeah.
So we can get distracted by the red herring of, is the math right?
Yeah.
Or we can say, what is it we've been asked to build, and does it actually have a positive environmental impact?
Yeah.
And that's where I have yet to see the CRD prove that assertion.
Yeah, it's like, you know,
They've given up on proving it. In
it
fact,
seemed that
now
they
they're just
were in a
saying
big
the
hurry
government
to,
is
the big
making
hurry to
us.
jump off the cliff, as far as I'm concerned.
They fought against it for a while in the in the last, well, I guess 15, 20 years ago. They did
Yeah.
do their best with Ottawa to try to have our situation recognized. But they lost that battle, and so it's been a series of losing battles that have got us to this point.
Yeah.
If you want to look at, why did they lose the battle, there's other cities in Canada that feel that if they have to spend the money on wastewater treatment, all cities should have to spend the money on wastewater treatment.
Yeah.
But as David Anderson, I think, once pointed out, that's like saying that Victoria has to have the same snow removal equipment as Montreal.
Well, but also the region's quite diverse. I live in the country. I have my own well. I have a septic field. I have to take care of those things very carefully.
Yeah.
But my taxes are also shooting up to cover the or the sewage system.
Well, it depends on which municipality you live in.
I'm in Saanich.
You're in Saanich, so yeah, your taxes are going to go up.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Surprise!
But the thing is, like, what my concern is mostly is the process, of course. And I really feel the process wasn't fair. And what we're most concerned about is if the CRD had a set of facts, that they had their own data that showed that water usage was going down, therefore the sewage treatment plants would be smaller. But they changed the line on the graph went down. In fact, when we saw the graph, their projections was up, and they're misrepresenting their own data.
Okay,
That's
but
the
all that
claim.
gets us is a smaller plant. It doesn't mean we don't have to build the plant.
Yeah, but it does show that
The thing is
there's-
that if you built the same plant and made it 25% smaller, you'd still have the expense for the plant. You'd still have all of the same processes going
Yeah.
on. Making the plant a little bit bigger is not the cost driver.
yeah,
They still would have wanted to put it at McLaughlin, and we still
Yeah.
would have ended up there because of the regional governance
Yeah.
that landed it there instead of looking at doing a plant at Clover and a plant at
Yeah.
McLaughlin or a plant at Rock Bay. The process up to that
Yeah.
point, I don't think that it's right to say the math was wrong and that's what the problem is here.
Yeah.
The math is the cherry, the very rotten cherry on top of the very bad ice cream sundae.
We spent the whole interview just belaboring this point because for me, there's also a group of people that thought that distributed systems were much more environmentally sustainable as well as much less expensive. I heard today talking to an expert that the overall system with about 20 of these smaller plants would have cost around $250 million. And he was asserting that those numbers are really accurate. And also, when you go to those distributed systems, where as technology arrives, we can upgrade them very easily with
Yeah.
less expense and all that. Do you think that we kind of rushed past that option a little too quickly?
I had been of that opinion, and then I asked the Harbor Resource Partners that when they came to our council, and we were able to
Yeah.
pretty much ask. It was a free for all. We could ask
Yeah.
them whatever questions we wanted. I said, "Why not a distributed system?" And the situation is, and I, because I was on the distributed system
Yeah.
bandwagon big time.
Yeah.
There has to be a market for the byproducts of those plants
Yeah.
to create the economic conditions that make them reasonable.
Yeah.
And heat, there's a number of places where we could have used the heat recovery.
Yeah.
The water, not as much.
Yeah.
By the time the CRD decided they wanted to build one plant, and they pretty much, now people are just saying, oh, just get it done quick. Well, a distributed system isn't going to happen fast enough
Yeah.
for the federal government regulations. And that's where we come back to the federal government regulations, which are at the root of all of this.
Yeah.
We're frustrated at the CRD doing a bad job of meeting bad regulations.
Yeah.
If you were to change the regulations, the bad job that the CRD is doing of it
Yeah.
wouldn't be as bad.
Boy, I mean, did we
Go to
figure-
root causes.
Look, thank you so much for coming in, and where there's lots to be discussed here yet about
Oh,
what's
there's
happening.
hours of discussion.
So, and in the future, we're going to be bringing in some real critics of the whole thing, and we are really going to look at the numbers and really question whether the CRD has represented things fairly. Thank you so much, Susan, for coming in.
Thank you.
And that completes this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome back to Citizens Forum. And for our final guest today, we have William Goldiat. William is the CEO of the St. Bakita Anakdar
Anakdar.
Anakdar
Yeah.
Peace Foundation. William is from the Sudan, from South Sudan, and he's here to talk to us today about the situation in Sudan and some of the historical background that has led us to the situation that we're in Sudan today. So welcome to the show, William.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if you could just give us a sketch of a little bit of the history of Sudan and what has led to the war that happened recently in Sudan, and what were the issues that led to the separation of Sudan into North and South?
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah. If you can allow me just to sing
Sure.
a short song in my language, that would be,
That'd be
because it's
marvelous.
related to the war. And so you will never understand it, but you will hear it. Aluya rada bayo churing dang ye kang ye kula juri tunga yin ko da jimbaga bayo churin ya kuni barada ya pidi rumi kalila kumuna chorja ba kunyi bin da bera ya kada kalila ya dagi nyi kang yo jimbaga pajuwin ologa juok yau ber ologa bunyi yau pa yau go gin kalila ya jara kanyu ko gol jurat tumini. So the song is about around 600 years ago that they made this song. So the song, what the song is saying about is, God, I will kneel down to you and give you my complaint that there is no years passing without bearing my debt. I wonder what happened to me. If it is you, God, causing me this, I will remain. But if it is a human, I will wander away. So indeed, the meaning of the song is life. And that is the reason why I am out, because I didn't leave my country just to come here for no reason. I escaped because from the war. So the song is so meaningful. We see around the world today we have more than 4 million Southern Sudan who will have their villages, and they are now around the world. So the problem in Sudan started in 1300s. So it started with a war between the South and the North. So imagine 1300s. It's a long time.
That's remarkable.
So how many people died that time, we never know. So it was a war in the first place as a religious war or cultural war, that the people in northern Sudan, they are the result of marriage between African and Arab. So like the people Métis in Canada here. So they became the northern Sudanese. And the people like me are typical African in southern Sudan. So the war continued between two parts of Sudan.
So it was a mostly, primarily a Christian southern Sudan and primarily a Muslim Arab northern.
That time, the Christianity was not there yet.
Okay.
So the people have traditional religions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when British came and he found the two parts of Sudan in a war, so the British separated the two countries. So the northern Sudan became attached to the the Middle East.
Right.
And southern Sudan became attached to Africa.
Right.
And then English language become official language in southern Sudan.
Yeah.
And Christianity become a religion of southern Sudan.
Around what dates would that have been?
I think 1860, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is when the British conquered this Sudan. It's called Anglo-Egyptian administration
Yeah.
at that time.
So, you know, what is the reason for the current war? And after the liberation of South Sudan, who are the targeted people or group in this war?
It is really heartbreaking that this thing happened, because the war between Northern Sudan and the South caused loss of life. Around more than 2 million people died. But in 2005, the peace between Sudan and South Sudan was signed, and then that gave us right to decide whether Sudan will remain as united or will be separated.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so in 2011, the people of Southern Sudan voted, and then 99% voted for separation.
Okay.
And in 2011, in July, South Sudan become independent countries.
Okay.
But what happened now is that the current government tried, I cannot say try, but it hijacked the people power, you know.
Yeah.
So the current government is using the ethnicity in order to gain the support of the
Okay.
tribe, which is Danka tribe.
Yeah.
But it's not the case. It's just individuals in the power, or a tiny clan that controlling the power.
Yeah.
But the first people who are targeted in Southern Sudan was Shilluk
Yeah.
tribe. Where I come from is my tribe. They were excluded from the government, and their villages were taken away from them and given to the clan of the president of Southern Sudan. So the people of Shilluk people, they start resisting
Yeah.
to keep their villages, so they become target. But the Shilluk politicians, they fought a political war to try to have a change
Yeah.
or in the government that will belong to all people.
Yeah.
So that resulted to a positive response from the member of
Yeah.
the ruling party, and then they try to join the opposition, calling for democratic transformations.
Right.
But the president didn't want that. And then the president in 2013 started to arrest his cabinet who are trying to oppose his rule. So 2013, the war began in Juba,
Okay.
and then it became now the civil war in Southern Sudan.
And
But
so the war is in southern Sudan, and it's nothing to do with anything with the north at this point.
No.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that, because there's intricacies in the issue that are hard to follow sometimes. Is there any positive response from the international community and from the Canadian government to help the people of South Sudan?
Well, you know, our government has been always a frontliner in helping other people.
Yeah.
We know that in terms of national disasters. But in terms of Southern Sudanese, no. There is, at this moment, there is no move from our government.
Yeah.
But you have, like European Union, they already pledged
Yeah.
like around 82 million euro toward the humanitarians.
Well, that's very significant.
Yeah, that is just in last month in 21, sorry.
That's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
good.
that was the first block to respond to the famine here.
I just want to, because we're just going to have a few minutes left, and I think, your organization is organizing an event coming up in March, and this show will be will be on air just about at the right time. Could you tell me about what that event's all about and who can attend?
It is open to public,
Yeah.
people like you who can just come and learn more about the situation in Southern Sudan.
Yeah.
So it's just to raise the public awareness
Yeah.
here. Yeah, but it's open to all the people.
Where's this going to happen at?
It's going to happen at the City Hall at 4 o'clock to 6:30 p.m.
What street is that on? What's the address?
It's 1 Centennial Square, Victoria.
Oh, it's Centennial Square,
Yeah,
okay.
City Hall. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. It's just beside you here.
It is. I like the address, 1 Centennial Square. It's pretty hard to forget that one.
Yeah.
I just want to say that how important it is that the message does get out to the public, that and these events happen, so that we can come and talk to the people that are concerned with the issues, and it's a face-to-face event, and it's not filtered through the corporate media and all that. And let's just reiterate, what date is that going to happen on that event?
It's on 11 March.
11th of March?
11 March 2017, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's great. Thank you so much, William, for coming in. I really appreciate it. And would you like to sing us on out of the show? Do you have any more?
I will sing in a city hall. You need to come
Okay.
here. We have more songs.
That's just a preview.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So
Thank you
that
very
wraps
much.
up our show for today, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.